Okay. So for my three interviewers, I had two 14-year-olds, a male and a female, and then I did my younger sister who's 18. She's not in 12th grade. She just graduated in June, so she is still fresh. She hasn't started college or anything like that. So that is why I used her for a third one. Also, I had like a different view on her reading thoughts. I thought actually that she was more interested in reading, and then come to find out she's not. But it kind of seems like she wants to get there with her interview questions. So that was something that was interesting. Um, so First off, what I've noticed with kind of all three interviews is that with question one, number one, do you consider yourself a good reader? It was either yes or no, and the reason why, if you're a good reader or not, is if you read a lot of books. And so I found it interesting that like all three people, and they're all very different, think that in order to be a good reader, you have to read a lot. So that was interesting to me. Um, for how did you learn to read? It seemed like no one can really remember how they learned to read. I think that you forget as time goes on that you're learning to read. Always when you're younger, you start by learning, stop signs, things like that, and then you move on to learn. You're learning recognizing restaurants and stores like Walmart and McDonald's, and then you start reading books with just a couple words. Then you go on to read, chapter books and especially now, we're always reading text messages and emails. So I think that it's funny that no one remembers when they started to read. I guess for me, when I tried to reflect on the question, I think that myself, I remember reading with my family. My parents and my grandparents and my aunts and uncles used to always read before I would go to bed. And I remember, I don't necessarily fully remember, but I know that I would, especially books that I liked, I would memorize them and, think that I was reading along with them. So that's where I started, but no one could really remember how they learned how to read. Um, let's see. The experiences question all three people seemed to have trouble answering. Like, they didn't know whether they had any good experiences or not. I think that, and I tried to rephrase the question to say, like, you know, um, as you said, like, did you like being read to as a child? I also brought up like maybe a teacher read a favorite book or a teacher introduced them to a favorite genre, and for some reason, no one really kind of got it. And again, back to question number one, for why do people read? It's because people like to read. But at the same time, the 18-year-old Jade, she doesn't like to read, but she is reading all the time, especially through text messages. And when she's at work, she's always reading. So I think that people forget that you're reading all the time, really, but it's not when you think about it. I think that they don't realize that reading is just not reading novels. You're reading constantly all the time. Um, and for what does someone have to do in order to be a good reader? I don't think anybody quite answered that question very well. Two people said that they read lots of books, that they have to read lots of books, and that makes them a good reader. And then that goes back to question number one again. And so for this one, I thought that at least my sister, the 18-year-old, I would have thought that at least she would have said that making a good reader is when someone can comprehend something, so you actually understand it, and not necessarily in those terms. She wouldn't have to said comprehend, but I was expecting to say like, in order to be a good reader, you have to understand something of what you're reading. But no one said that. Not even, the 12th grader that just was in high school, even she didn't remember it. So that was interesting to me. And it kind of stings because then it's like, okay, are any of the three people that I chose, I think that they're especially the girl who loves to read. I think that she's on the path to be a great reader, but right now I don't think she's necessarily always comprehending exactly what's happening in the book. So that kind of stinks. But I think that she will get there because she does love to read so much. But even after I interviewed Jasmine, the one that loves to read, after I interviewed her, she wanted to read a book to the class, and she did. And she read with expression. She was very fluent with how she read, and she was able to say the words with no problem. However, she flew through it, and I don't think she got anything of what was just in the book. And it was a short book because we were getting ready to leave, but I don't think anything got retained on what the book was about, what was going on, the pictures, anything. She just went for their words and kept going, and that was it. Um, so let's see. Oh, and I think that it was interesting that it was kind of divided on whether they like the books read to them. I know that Jasmine understood that when someone is reading the books, she's able to understand it better. So that told me that she is more of a auditory learner sometimes in that aspect because she knows that she's reading too fast where she's not getting the information that she needs. So that was nice that I seen that. Um, and then for how often do you read? I thought this was funny that no one realized that they're reading every day aside from just books. Like I said earlier, they're reading signs and text messages and things like that. So people are always reading, but none of these really realized it. I think it took a moment. My sister didn't say that at first, but it did take her a moment to realize that she does read every day, especially at work. And then, so for the last book that anybody read, I think because of summertime, everybody read a book that was not assigned to them, which was nice. So it means that everybody kind of sort of read something within the past month that kind of got them interested. And everybody had a different spectrum on where they liked to read. So Jade liked real life novels, Jasmine likes animals and kind of fantasy, and then Mike likes history books. I had Mike as a student this summer for BOCES, and he loves to read picture history books. I noticed that he's not necessarily always reading. He likes to look at the pictures and then like read the captions and stuff like that. But he is thoroughly interested in history and what that has to offer. Um, the favorite authors. I know that Mike chose Charles Dickens because his family reads the Christmas Carol every Christmas, and I think that correlates with being able to spend family time and things like that. But I don't think any one of these people that are interviewed really thought about who their favorite author is. I don't think they really got it. Um, So for Mike and for my sister, Mike said that I was the best reader he knows, and when that was brought up, when he was thinking about reader, I think that he was thinking about the voice, not the person who is actually reading. Because for the last question, for one of the questions, who is a better reader, male or female, he said males because males have a better voice. So when he hears the word reader, he is thinking of someone who is reading it aloud, not reading it internally or anything like that. So Mike had said that he likes the way that I read. We read Coraline this summer, and so they were all pretty interested in it, and they liked it. And then on the other hand, back to question one, my sister said that I was a good reader because I read all the time and I have books everywhere. So again, they forgot the part that, with comprehension and things like that. Um, so let's see. um, Jade did realize that she needs to read slow in order to comprehend things, and I think Jasmine did as well. She said, "Oh no, her reading ability. She didn't. Oh, this was another question. She kind of didn't understand that, and neither did Mike. Um, Mike, for the reading abilities, he referenced reading with his family. So I don't know how that got confused, but then also Jasmine got confused with it too because she said the best part of reading is the words and the pictures. So I think that's what she likes the best, but I don't think she gathered that it was like internally what her abilities best were. But oh, that was the next question, that Jasmine did realize that she needs to read slower. Um, so Oh, and then for the what kind of movies people like, that did kind of correspond with what kind of books they liked. Mike kind of liked history books, but then he really likes fantasy movies. So that's kind of a different spectrum. He didn't really mention that he likes to watch history movies, but the other two stayed true to what books they like. And then Mike was the only one that said he would be okay with watching the movie first. And I think that goes along with Coraline this summer. Like I said, we read it. And so everyone had already watched the movie, but that they had never read the book. So that's why we chose as a class to read Coraline instead. And so that's why he said that. So overall, it was interesting to see what everyone had to say. I think the questions, unfortunately, seemed to confuse some of them sometimes, and it was hard to kind of talk them through it, because after I tried to rephrase it, they still didn't really get it. And I think that it was just because it was kind of weird for them, just because I don't think they ever had anybody like interview them in a way that asked them type of questions. But I think that what I did notice, and what we talked about a lot this course, is that all three of these students read what interests them. And when something doesn't interest them, they're not reading it. So, for example, a lot of them didn't really care for magazines, so they gave it a one. Or no, not magazines. I'm sorry. Like newspapers, and I don't think any of them like reading newspapers. Jasmine liked to read the ads, but they're not going to read it, and I think it's because they're not really connecting to it. So Jade likes action, and if action's not in the newspaper, she's not going to read it. And Jasmine likes animals, and unless there's an animal section, I don't think that she's really going to read it. So this goes back to what we've been talking about all summer with connecting to the books, and this is why young adult literature is so important in our classroom, because they can really relate to them. Let's see. And one of the quotes from one of our articles was that our challenge is to prepare all students for college and career readiness in the 21st century through meaningful encounters with interesting and complex text. Like I said, with all three readers, I don't think that any of them are at the point where their readings are necessarily super meaningful to them, because I don't think they're really getting much out of it aside from just reading, unless they're reading with the class. I think that reading with the class, they're going to get something more out of it, because they're having better comprehension, and they're having better connection to self and to their world and to others. But with all of them reading on their own, I don't think that it's easy for them to get what they're saying, especially with Jasmine. She definitely knows that she reads too fast, and like I said, I don't think that she's getting anything out of it from reading. So yeah, I definitely like doing these interview questions. I think this would be a cool activity to do with students in the English classroom. Like if they did their own research, I think that this kind of would be cool to see how the students would interact with each other with getting different research about how they read. But like I said, my most interesting thing that I found was that no one really had any comprehension skills, and so I think that's something that as a teacher I'm going to have to really focus on, and find ways to ensure that the students are comprehending what is being said. Otherwise, what are they really getting out of reading? So yeah, thank you for everything, and this was an awesome class. I definitely learned a lot, and I really got my mind open more to different types of books and authors, and I love that, because I definitely need it, because I love reading myself. So thanks again.